of sinful, broken people has a certain way they want to live, but then God obviously has a way that he wants us to live. And so obviously, it makes sense that those two things are not going to mesh well. God's way of living is going to be very different from the world's way of living due to how imperfect and broken people are and how perfect and righteous that God is, right? And so it makes sense that the Bible, that what Jesus talks about, that those things are countercultural to the normal society and culture that we experience all the time, right? And so we are going to talk about this week about something that's difficult, that's pretty difficult, honestly, for a lot of different people. For a bunch of different reasons. And that is this idea of trying to gain things here on earth. The way that Jesus is going to phrase it in our passage, which is, if you want to turn there, you can. It's Matthew 6, starting in verse 19. So Matthew 6, verse 19. But Jesus is going to phrase it as this idea of storing up treasures here on earth, okay? Versus storing up treasures in heaven. Right? That's kind of the thing he's going to pit against one another. This idea, now, obviously our society, our culture, right? We are a consumer society. That is constantly what we do. We consume. We are a country that is wealthy. Even our low class, our middle class has more money than a lot of people around the world. And that is what we're taught, is we go get stuff. We use it for a little while, we get rid of it, right? And then we go get more stuff, and we're taught to just continue to go. Ruben's shaking his head because they don't get rid of things. That's okay. Yeah. It's all right. My wife does the same thing. I'm like, why is this still here? But anyway, this idea of we just keep getting more, and we keep getting more, and we keep getting more, right? And so Jesus is basically going to say, you don't need to be worrying about storing treasures up here. Stop worrying about storing treasures up here. Instead, what you should be doing is storing up treasures in heaven. And so really what it comes down to is this idea of choosing between where our focus is. Is our focus here on stuff on earth, or is our focus on the things of God? And there was one other thing I was going to say, and I lost it. I looked at it, I lost it, and it was a whole thing. The idea is that we commit so much of our lives, right? We devote so much of our lives to one thing or the other. Are we focused about things here on earth? We focused about things in heaven? Which one is it? And it's important before we even start that I make the distinction. That's where I was going. I knew I'd find it. You just had to give me a minute. It's important we make the distinction. It does not mean that the things here on earth are evil inherently. Okay? Jesus is going to talk about this too. It's not that the things here on earth are evil. So having a bunch of stuff, the stuff in and of itself, right? The jewels, the gold, whatever it is you have, it's not evil. It's the love of that thing that is going to be the problem, right? It's the love of those things that is going to cause a wedge, and it's going to cause you to choose, because you can't be two places at once, basically, and your heart can't either. And so Jesus is going to talk about that. Matthew 6, verse 19, here's what Jesus says about it. He says, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin, I'm from the South, moths, it's not even a word. Where moths and vermins do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." All right, so I think first off, we already have Jesus going against the grain of society, right? Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth. All right, that is already completely opposite, completely opposite from what the rest of the world does. All right, the rest of the world, again, we are a consumer society. You want to get as much stuff as you possibly can. The more stuff you have, the happier, the better off you'll be, the more important you'll be. More stuff means you're getting ahead. So you should get more things. That's the basic idea, is that As I get more money, as I get a bigger house, I need more things to fill that house, right? I need more stuff. That's kind of where our culture goes. And so Jesus is already kind of going against the grain and basically says, do not store up treasures here. You don't need treasures here. We've talked about this when I read the New Testament and we read Paul, the missionary in the New Testament. Paul does this thing where he'll present points, right? He'll present all these points that he's making. And then after he presents the points, then he'll tell you what the argument is. Makes no sense, right? Like, it's a really backwards way of doing it sometimes. I'm going to tell you all the reasons why we should do things, and then I'm going to tell you what we should actually do. It's a little weird sometimes. Jesus does not do this. That is not the normal way in which Jesus was speaking. Jesus kind of followed the normal formula, which we see here, which is, I'm going to give you the summary of my statement. I'm going to give you the thesis of my argument, right, of what I'm trying to say. And so everything we're about to read from 19 through 24 can be summed up in these first verses. All right, he's making it clear. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth. Why? Because moths and vermin can destroy them, or thieves can break in and steal. So he's basically saying they're temporary. Don't store up temporary things. They're going to go away at some point, right? You cannot keep them. At some point, you will no longer have those things. So you will have spent your entire life gathering things that do not last, right? That's really where it goes to. Then he says, instead, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Why? Because those things are eternal. They don't go away. We talked about this a little bit last week, that the things of the earth are temporary while the things of God are eternal, right? And so these treasures that we store ourselves in heaven, these treasures that we get from God, they don't go away. So it makes sense. Why would you commit your life to something that's temporary when you could devote and commit your life to something that's eternal? And then he kind of sums up everything that you need to know, which is, why does this all matter? Well, it matters because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. All right? So wherever you choose to put your commitment, your devotion, wherever you choose to turn your focus, make your priority, that is where your heart will be also. Your heart will follow what you find to be most important. If you want to know, they used to ask that cheesy question like in youth camps, like, well, if there was a fire, what was one of the things you'd grab before you leave? And everybody would be like, your Bible. And it's like, I get it. To be fair, Bible, we're blessed in this country. A Bible's a little bit more replaceable than some other things you could grab, but that was the church answer, right? You had to answer the Bible. And why? Because that's how you showed everybody that was the most important thing to you, right? This is the same thing here, is that whatever's most important to you, the thing that actually drives you, that is where your heart is going to be. It's just how it works, all right? This is not one of those instances in which you can fake it until you make it. Where the thing you value the most, the thing that you hold higher than anything else in your life, that is where your heart is going to be. It's going to be there. And you can't have both. I know the easy answer is, well, I can have, my heart's here right now, but my heart will be in heaven when you can't have both. Jesus will get into that in just a minute. We'll speak on it, but you can't have both. You have to choose. Are you going to devote, commit, turn your heart toward the things of earth, or are you going to turn your heart and commit and devote yourself to the things of heaven? Because wherever you choose, that's where you're going to end up. That's where your value lies. And you need to make sure your value's in the right place. And so he moves on in verse 22. Verse 22, he says, now it's going to get a little weird here, but I promise I'll explain. Verse 22, he says, the eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? All right, so feels like he goes way off subject here. Like, what is he talking about? We're talking about treasures in heaven. What does that have to do with my eyes? What does that have to do with light in my body? All that kind of stuff. We've talked about this before. Here's what I'm going to mention. We, in English, we have idioms, we have sayings that we say often, right? Like a stitch in time saves 9, right? That's an idiom. That's a saying that we all know, we recognize when we hear it. And the things about idioms and sayings are that they're a group of words, but when we say that group of words, it has nothing to do with what we're saying. It actually means something totally different. We use those group of words to mean a totally different meaning than what their actual definition is, right? When I say a stitch in time saves 9, I am not talking about sewing. Never, almost never am I talking about sewing. Has nothing to do with stitches, actually, okay? In fact, what I'm actually saying is that if you deal with a problem at the beginning, then that problem won't get worse, right? That's actually what I'm saying to you. So I'm using this group of words to mean something totally different from what they actually mean. It's a reference almost, right? We have that a lot now with social media. You know, kids will say random things from different videos to me. You know, like for a while, Ohio meant that like stuff wasn't good, it was boring, right? You just called it Ohio because the state of Ohio is boring. And that came from a video, right? And so you gain this meaning and you use this word from what it's actually meant for. Well, the reality is that in every language, they have these idioms, these sayings. They have certain things that the people of that time, that culture would have understood immediately because they heard it a lot. But then when you read it back, first off, Jesus is speaking one language. Then it was written down in Greek, a different language. Then we translated that Greek into English, which is a different language. And the problems with idioms and sayings is that when you translate them, it's almost impossible to understand what's going on. If I had somebody who just learned English and I told them a stitch in time saves 9, they're like, what are you talking? That has nothing to do with what we were just talking about, right? Or curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. Somebody's going to read that in like 2,000 years and be like, what are they talking about? Like, what? That has nothing to do with cats, has nothing to do with animals. Instead, what we mean by that is that curiosity is a good thing, right? Like it's risky kind of, but it's a good thing. If you have to be careful with it. That's what we're really trying to say from saying those things. Well, that's what's happening here is Jesus is using an idiom that they would have understood. They would have understood the saying that he's referencing. Problem is we don't. And so it kind of sounds like, well, what the heck is he talking about? Here's the big part of it is that when you think I, okay, in this passage, when you think I, when he says the eye is the lamp of the body, first, he's not talking about your real eyes, okay? He's not saying that as long as you don't, have vision problems or you avoid glaucoma, that the rest of your body's gonna be great. That's not what he's saying. He is saying that the eye is a metaphor or it's a stand-in for some things, and those things are, I want you to think perception and understanding. Okay, your eye, think like the third eye. That's kind of what they mentioned a lot of times. If you notice in a lot of Old Testament dreams, a lot of the creatures in those dreams have a bunch of eyes, right? Because their understanding, their perception is really great. A lot of creatures have a bunch of heads in a lot of those dreams. Why? Because heads stand for knowledge. So like, think of that. Like the eye is the perception, the understanding, right? And then the last part that we need to add is that when he says healthy, your Bibles may actually say this, because I know that, I can't remember if I was looking at a different translation. I want to say the NIV did. Your Bibles may have a subnote on the word healthy. And that Greek word used for healthy, I don't know how to say the Greek word, so I'm not going to, but that Greek word used for healthy alludes to kind of a feeling of also being generous, being giving and caring. So you kind of have this idea of this saying that they're talking about, whatever it may be or however it made sense to them. It's this idea of having good perception, good understanding, being generous and being caring, all kind of mixed into one, right? And Jesus is saying, eye is the lamp of the body, the perception, the understanding is the lamp of the body. If that understanding, that perception is generous and it's caring, right? If those things are working together, then your body's healthy. It's a good thing. But if your perception, your understanding is not so great and it's more stingy and you hoard everything, then your body's full of darkness. See how that kind of makes a little bit more sense? I'll give you a real life example. I had this class in college. I was in college. Let's just say my mental health was not great. I was not taking care of it the way that I should have. I was struggling as a young adult, okay? And I was in college, and I've told you I really don't like school. I struggle with it. This just kind of emphasizes that point. But I was in college and I had this class. I cannot remember what it was called. Easiest class you ever had. I was a music major, so it's an art, right? Technically, it's an art. Well, this class was just like art appreciation, basically, and not like the one where you study history. You had to come into this class, you sat down for an hour, you listened to music. If you wanted to take notes on it, you could, but you're basically just observing the art of music, right? At the end of the class, you sign a piece of paper and you leave. And as long as you don't miss 3 classes, you get 100. That's it. That's all you had to do. Half the time I went to sleep because, they dim the lights. There's some jazz band on stage. And so I'm like, well, what do you want me to do, right? But as long as I signed the sheet of paper at the end, it didn't matter, right? I'm going to get 100. I'm telling you right now, I failed that class, all right? I failed that class because at the time that class took place, I had some buddies that would meet in the lunchroom, and they would play games, they would play strategy games, they would play cards, and I wanted to be hanging out with them instead. That's where my priority was, right? And so this is an example of a lack or a bad perception and understanding of what was priority and what was important in the world, right? Like, I did not see the situation correctly or well, right? If I had good perception and understanding, I would have recognized that, my parents spent money on this class. They spent hard-earned money on this class, and the best way to respect and honor them and appreciate them would be to show up and just pass the class. That would be the best. When I have a clear perception and understanding, then I can make good choices, and my body is good. When we don't see things the correct way, doesn't work out very good, right? That's kind of where he's going with this. The last part we need to kind of push into this is the generosity part, right? This idea of being generous, being caring, not being stingy, this idea of being healthy. This is an important part because you have to understand what Jesus is saying here, which is, he starts out saying, do not store up treasures for yourself in heaven, right? Then he gets to the second part, and it's almost like, in fact, be generous and caring with what you have. Don't be stingy and hoard things. So don't worry about the treasures here so much. In fact, don't even worry about storing them up and getting a whole bunch of them. I would rather you be generous and caring with the things that you already have. Understand what he's saying here? Now we're getting kind of a full picture of this idea of don't store up treasures in heaven. It's better to store up treasures. Don't store up treasures on earth. Instead, it's better to store up treasures in heaven. And if you have a good perception and understanding of this, then you would be generous and caring with the things you already have, right? It's all meshing together to make a little bit more sense. This is what he's getting at, is don't worry so much about the things here. Worry about the things in heaven. In fact, even while you're here, be generous and caring with what you have, because if you're selfish, if you're hoarding, if you're stingy here, and your body's supposed to be receiving this light, if you're negative in that fashion and your body's instead receiving darkness, and the darkness that you're receiving is technically supposed to be light, how dark is the dark? Right? That's kind of where he's going with this. It's how dark is the dark if even the things that are supposed to be light in your life are dark? I don't know if that makes sense. I almost feel like I'm sounding like Paul when he just says the same word over and over. But that's kind of what he's saying here is, man, you could be doing good things and that can bring light into your body. And then imagine if those things that you're supposed to be doing that are good are technically bringing darkness. How dark is the dark in you? You're really, really lost and misconstrued at that point. The last thing he's going to say, he's going to end it in verse 24. He says, no one can serve 2 masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. So I mentioned earlier, there's a choice we have to make. We can't have both. We can't say, well, my heart is on earth and it's with God. Jesus is saying your heart's going to be one way or another. It's going to be in one place or the other. It can't be in both. You cannot serve 2 masters. In fact, either you will hate the one and love the other, or you would be devoted to one and despise the other. There will be conflict between the two. You cannot be in 2 places at once. You've got to choose. There has to be a choice in which you make Am I going to serve the things here on earth, or am I going to serve God? And I want to clarify, God is not, because this is taken out of context all the time, and you know that bugs the heck out of me. Jesus is not saying that you can't own both God and money. He's not saying that you can't be a Christian and be rich, or be a Christian and be wealthy. He's not saying get rid of all your stuff. The issue arises when, who are you serving? Are you serving the money, or are you serving God? That's where the issue arises. In the Old Testament, we see God bless plenty of people with riches, with stuff. And that's fine, as long as they don't serve that stuff and continue to serve him. See how that works? The stuff here is not inherently evil. It's not bad. Riches is not the problem. Loving the riches more than God is the issue. I worked at Jared, the Gallery of Jewelry. Okay, he went to Jared. I worked at Jared. Okay. In fact, I got a really good deal while I worked there on my wife's ring, so I was always thankful for that. Super good deal because I worked there. But I've always had an issue with working in certain retail shops, especially the jewelry store. And I was talking to one of the managers. That manager, he was an assistant manager. I'm not going to say his name. But he worked there for 8 years. He'd worked his way up to assistant manager. They were looking at making him a store manager. And so he was doing a really good job. His life was based around jewelry. And I didn't mean to. I was young. I was kind of an idiot. I still kind of am sometimes. But more so then, I just started talking to him, and I was thinking out loud, and I didn't realize, what I was really saying to him. But I was thinking out loud, and I was just I just don't understand how people can spend large sums of money on a necklace. I don't get it. Jewelry doesn't make sense to me in that fashion. Y'all know me. I'm a simple man with simple things. If it's a little beat up, but it works as good as the shiny new thing, I'm just going to live with the thing that's already that's just how I am, right? And so I just told him, I was think of how much $10,000 could do for people, for yourself, for Bill. 10 grand, that's a lot of money for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And I mean, daily people would walk in and just drop 10 grand on a ring. What? That's crazy to me, right? And so now when I start saying this, he gets a little defensive because I'm kind of devaluing his whole career here, right? I didn't mean to. It wasn't my intention. That's kind of what I'm doing. I'm basically, you picked the wrong line of work, dude. Your line of work is not really very moral, so that's kind of what I'm saying without realizing it. So he gets a little defensive, and I totally understand why he would. But we get to the crux of the argument, which is pretty much where these arguments always end up. And I looked and I was okay, but be real with me. Tell me, if you had $10,000 to give to children in need, or you had $10,000 to buy a ring, which one would you rather do, right? And I'm telling y'all, he did not want to say the kids, okay? He did not want to say it. I think, obviously, he was a nice guy. Deep down, if he had to make that choice and press the red button, it'd probably go to the kids, right? But he really didn't want to say it because I was basically asking him to, devalue everything he'd worked for. And that basically, if that's what he really believed, if he really believed that we should be giving it to other people, then what's the point of anybody ever coming into his store and buying things from him, right? It undermines everything. I'm not trying to bash him or say he's a bad person, nothing like that. I'm not trying to say that I somehow have the moral high ground on him. That is not where I'm trying to go with this. I'm just trying to simply point out that when your heart is consumed or is preoccupied with the things of this earth, then the things of heaven don't make much sense to you. And when your heart is preoccupied on the things of heaven, the stuff of this world doesn't really make much sense to you. And that's what Jesus is saying here. He says, either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. Your heart can't be in two places. For people in this room that have been Christians a long time, the world starts to make less and less sense based on what we know about Jesus Christ and our relationship with God. And when you're consumed with the world, religion, having a relationship with God makes very little sense to you, right? It's because of where your heart is and where you put your time, where you've devoted and committed yourself to. I knew I was going to need water today. Allergies were bad this morning. I don't know about y'all, but it was bad for me this morning. There cannot be two most important things in your life. That it's not possible. There can't be two most important things in your life. My mom had 4 kids, okay? She had 4 kids, and she'll tell you that she has 4 favorite kids. She's lying, okay? It's very obvious that I'm the favorite and everybody else falls a little bit behind me, right? Like, because she can't possibly have 4 favorites. That's not how this works, okay? One of us has to be most important to her. It's just how it is. And the other kids will just have to deal with that. It's how our heart works. It's how we're wired. There cannot be 2 most important things to us. You got to choose. Which one is priority to you? Which one would you give up so that you could have the other? Either your heart is with the things of earth or your heart is with the things of heaven. And Jesus is saying, you don't need to be focusing on these things of earth, these temporary things that will go away at some point. It would be much better for you to focus on the things of heaven that are eternal and last forever. The society and culture we live in, the reality is that we are addicted to just getting a whole bunch of things. However you feel about America, about the political climate, whatever it is, there's no doubt that there is propaganda that is sent to every single person in America, whether it be kids, teenagers, adults, middle-aged people, senior citizens, retirees, whatever it is. There is constant propaganda being pushed on all of us, and that propaganda is not even political. It is that if you get enough stuff, if you have enough shiny things, if you can gain enough things around you, you're going to be so much happier and your life is going to be so much better. That is what we're constantly told and sold. And the problem is that there are plenty of us in this room right now that have a lot of stuff, right? That have enough money to have some stuff and a lot of things around us, and yet that stuff still does not fulfill us. And the world has the same problem, is that the people that get a lot of money and get a lot of things, well, they realize that now that they have all those things, they're just less valuable. They don't mean as much. They're kind of trivial now because they can get them whenever they want. It actually devalues. And what happens is they realize that even though they have all these things, they're still unhappy. They're still not fulfilled. There's still something wrong going on, right? It's a lie that's sold to us that if we can get more things here on earth, our lives will be happier, will be better, everything will be good to go. And it's just not the truth. Jesus is saying it'd be much better for you to focus on the things that are eternal from God. We talked about this last week. Things on earth, they're temporary. Things of God, they're eternal. So it'd be much better to grab those things, hold on to those things, and we'll have those things forever. As opposed to, money and items and assets and land, like those things will go away eventually. Meanwhile, the things like love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, good, all the characteristics of God, those will last forever. And Jesus is saying it would be much better for you to invest in those things, so to speak, as opposed to trusting the things of earth. And as Christians, sometimes we just need to be reminded, y'all. I don't want you to think I'm equating our struggle with other people's struggle. I never try to do that. Everybody's struggle is different. But there's this idea that Christians in America have it easy, right? Because we're not being persecuted. We don't have, we have religious freedom. So there's none of this outside force like threatening to hurt us, right? And so we must have it easy in America. The problem is that we have our own set of problems. And this own set of problems we have is, there's nobody with a loud voice saying they're going to hurt us if we believe a certain thing. But there's whispers constantly being put in our ears. There's whispers constantly being put in our ears, temptations constantly being set in front. in front of us, shiny things that are easily distracted or we're easily distracted with. And before you know it, those whispers and those shiny things and the way that everybody else lives, it's so easy to just fall in line. And before you know it, you've kind of wandered away and your heart is squarely in the things that you own versus in your relationship with God. It's so easy. It is so easy to just follow the whispers and suddenly you're far away. Right? It takes mental discipline to live in this society and culture and recognize and know that if it comes down to it, I will give up everything because the most important thing in my life, more than anything else, higher than all other things I could possibly have, is my relationship with Jesus Christ and my relationship with God. That is the one thing that I will never give up, and everything else can fall to the wayside, no matter how nice it seems, no matter how shiny it is, no matter how entertaining it is. It will never compare to the relationship I have with Jesus Christ. It is important for us. Sometimes as Christians in America, we just need to be reminded of this. We just got to get our heads right a little bit. We start to wander a little bit, and we just need to be reminded that stuff looks great. People post it on social media, and it looks wonderful. But it is not Jesus Christ, and it will not fulfill you. And then lastly, I just want to mention maybe somebody, maybe you don't have a relationship with God, maybe you don't believe in church, so to speak, whether you're here, whether you're listening online, whatever it is, maybe this is something you've started to realize. Like we pray and hope that God works on your heart, but maybe this is something you've started to realize is that no matter how much stuff you gain, no matter how many ladders you climb in your workplace and get more and more money and more recognition, no matter what you do, it doesn't really seem to fill what you're looking for. There's got to be more, right? Maybe that's the thought, is there's got to be more than just stuff. Once you gain all the stuff, you've completed the task and now life is done. You've got it all. You don't need anything. There's no more meaning, there's no more purpose because we have enough. And the hope is that while you're listening to this, hopefully God will work on your heart and help you understand that there is more to life than just stuff and assets. There's more to life than that stuff. God has meaning and purpose he wants to give you. And it starts with a relationship with him. And if there's any way that we can help you with that, if there's any way we can discuss that with you, we at First Baptist Sachse would love to do that with you. We'd love to help you understand that Jesus is the most important thing you can have. That what he gives you lasts forever. It's not just temporary and goes away. This is why, as a church, we do things for our community, right? This is why we want to be out there, is to help them understand we live in a society that constantly attacks our minds. And it's important that we not only recognize, but we help other people recognize Jesus is the most important thing. That is where everything begins, and the rest can fall behind. But Jesus Christ is where it all starts. Let me pray for us.